I think one of these players made playoffs last season as well, which I don't think is necessarily something that's always a, a complete guarantee for these guys, right? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there was, one of these, the other guy making it. It was DnS last time. Maybe this time it can be the season of the player in the bottom left side. Our red Protoss, these two are teammates on Platinum Heroes. This is Goblin.
I believe throughout his entire career, Goblin has made it into the playoffs once. So yeah, definitely not a guarantee. In the top right side, we are looking at the main base of the other French Protoss. We saw Shutdown earlier, who had plenty of opportunity to bring the best of 3 home. Unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be for him. Will this Frenchman be able to do it? It is DnS. Adrian.
Lots of French players in a row. Just had Clem, then Shadone before that. The last one of the day, though.
No Drogo?
No, Drogo was yesterday. Put up a good fight against Spirit, man, actually. You asked me earlier about yesterday's highlights. Drogo Spirit was actually pretty cool. Like, Spirit was better, but Drogo nearly won from a bad position, so it was a cool game.
I believe it. I watched Drogo in the close qualifier as his final best of 5 was against Mixu. And Drogo really impressed me where I looked at his Oracle movement and I was like, damn, that old dog, he still has it. Even if he hasn't been grinding like he used to. It was very fun to watch. Sad for Mixu, because Mixu showed a lot of promise in a lot of the different games and different tournaments that we've seen of him as well. But Drogo still just had his number. These two, if I think of them in PvP, I feel that Goblin is the one that's a little bit more likely to go for the all-out one-base all-in, but he's also very comfortable in opening up with just Oracles and then play Twilight from there. They both love Stalkers, like almost every high-level Protoss player in this matchup. Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun one. There's a good chance that we're going to mirror the builds a little bit, but Goblin is the one who's got that pylon in the top left center of the map. And let's see what he's going to use that pylon for. It will be a Robo. And Goblin is going to go full arrow fire on us and most likely open up with a 3-gate Robo.
And ever since he told me about Arrow Fire, just being stubborn about proxy robos, I always think proxy robo. I'm like, whoa, the Arrow Fire, it's coming true. And yeah, this time it is going to be from Goblin, that robo coming in. And we're yet to see what DnS exactly wants to do. But 2 more Stalkers for him at least means to get a lot of units out. That should help him defensively when it comes to dealing with this attack.
If DnS can get this scout off, that'd be very big, because then he's got some time to get ready and he can respond in any way, shape, or form. That Stalker is close, Waddy. It's very close. And it will find what it's looking for. It's going to pick up that probe as well. DnS will immediately go for his own defensive robo. I don't hate it. Goblin a tiny bit paranoid about potentially losing power to this robo. I don't think you have to be too worried about it, but then again, you have Stalker number 3 and 4 making its way over, so yeah, I don't hate it that Goblin played it safe there. You can get a couple of shots off. I think DnS will most likely play it safe. Goblin is chasing very far though. Yeah, you get a kill, but now in return, we most likely end up losing a Stalker, even though that Immortal is awfully close to popping, and good job by Gobbus saving his Stalker. Stalker number 3 and 4 show up. DnS should just run back. The only thing that I hate a tiny bit about dropping your own robo as a response is that there's still that chance, right, that you kind of get soft contained in your main or even a hard contain, and then your opponent is just going to start working on your gateways. And if it's one base against one base, robo against robo, but you lose at least 1, if not 2 gateways in the front, you can't be too happy. So I'm curious to see where DnS is going to go with this. It's actually a bit surprising too that he goes War Prism first, so Prism before defensive Immortal.
Yeah, usually you go Immortal, then the Prism, and then the Prism obviously provides a lot of micro on that Immortal as well. To go Prism first, I was going to say, maybe he actually goes across the map with it and just tries to get in with a couple of Adepts and just tries to deal damage. Confident he can hold back at home without the Prism initially.
And he's not wrong, but now we're going to find ourselves in that scenario that I was talking about, where if you respond with the robo, but your opponent had a quicker robo, has a quicker Immortal, then it's going to start working in your gates. Don't think you really want to drain your entire battery by trying to save something that can't really be safe. Goblin realizing that there isn't too much to really be worried about at first, so he even tries to get a tiny bit adventurous. That War Prism has potential on the other side of the map. This is where, by the way, it's interesting to keep an eye on the nexus of Goblin. Goblin has no energy for a recall, and he just warped in 2 sentries, Wardy. Not exactly the unit that is really going to deal with Adepts.
Nope.
Oh, yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, he's going to be a little bit defenseless here, although the Adepts mess up their attacks initially, so not getting any kills just yet. Now they'll finally start to get rid of a few of these probes, so damage begins to be done. And DnS going to shade back the other side. But obviously sentries really do not do any damage at all. My goodness.
Yeah, that's really unlucky for Goblin. No energy for the recall. 3-4 seconds before this Warp Prism showed up, he warped in the 2 sentries, so the gateways were on cooldown too. A lovely call by DnS, man. It's like, all right, I was curious to see, okay, you get the scouts, so you have some time to get ready in figuring out how you want to deal with this, and he just says, I know what I want to do. I want to go Warp Prism first, and I'm just going to try to deal some damage on the other side of the map. Even if it's one base against one base, and you might get a gate, but if I can get a bunch of probes, I'll take it. And he didn't get just a few, he got 7. The follow-up is interesting as well, as DnS now goes for the Stargate. That is, I want to say, most likely for Phoenix, right? To make sure that you don't have to worry about a Warp Prism with 2 Immortals flying around like it's harder to swarm. But if that's not happening, you could theoretically still go for some very late Oracles, which wouldn't be too bad either, because it's not like Goblin has a great answer for Oracles. He cancelled the Stargate. Okay, the absolute last moment, he cancelled it, and he's going to go for a Twilight Council instead.
Yep, change the direction then from DnS. The Twilight Council is nice. Twilight's obviously very useful as the game progresses. As we have Hallucinations fighting for some scouting. The Prism is going to load up from DnS. 2 Immortals of his own are going to go and launch themselves into the mineral lines and the base and just try and get something out of this. Obviously Goblin has a very similar idea.
Yeah, but this is going to be so hard for Goblin, I think, to deal with at home. I mean, obviously for DnS not that easy, but at least DnS has that random battery. 2 Stalkers at the corner of Goblin's main is not going to be enough, as we're going to have a few more units come over. And this is where the sentries and the Adepts are somewhat useful, because they can soak up a few more shots than Stalkers can. I mean, obviously it comes down to micro at this point. Neither player is able to make a big mistake. It seems that DnS was pretty far out of position to deal with these 2 Immortals of Goblin, and where DnS found damage initially, it is Goblin who gets the better trade. Now is Goblin being too greedy though? Well, he kind of was. I was gonna say it's okay if he gets out of there with both Immortals, but losing one, then I don't know if I love those 8 probe kills all that much.
Especially when you've got no robo, right? Because now you can't replace any of that. So maybe it gives DnS a chance as well to maybe get aggressive. You know, he could actually have a bit of a push across the map and make something of this. I know he's well on the way to Blink, but maybe even just as Blink finishes, maybe then that's the timing. Plus, he'll have the Immortal advantage. And I think big things for DnS in the future as he just replaces those workers lost. But Goblin has not replaced the army supply deficit.
Seems that Goblin is going to hit a bit of a supply block as well. We're at 70 out of 70, 300 minerals in the bank. And that pylon just a few seconds ago got warped in. Rough first game for Goblin. It all starts off with the scout that gave DnS some time to react and figure out how he wanted to deal with it. Was a bit surprised about the Warp Prism first, but I think it's safe to say it was a pretty brilliant call, and the rest of the game has been quite sexy. DnS is not done yet. Doesn't now have to be worried about those 2 Immortals of Goblin anymore on his side of the map, so he can just pick up a few more units. I think he could have gotten a tiny bit more there than what he actually did, because those Immortals were sightseeing in the main base of Goblin, but you know, every bit of damage is obviously good, as he's going up to 3 bases quicker, and he didn't have to rebuild his own robo, which is a pretty expensive production facility.
Yep, ain't the cheapest, that's for sure. So everything you're saying, absolutely just great points. That DnS is maybe could have got more, but he's already in just a great spot. Third base going to be nicely ahead as well. Honestly, I just feel like with Blink finished, he maybe could have again tested his luck on the other side. You look at Goblin's army, it's just like, you know, what is it, right? Like, obviously he's positioned in the main base as well, afraid of the Prism, so even more reason that DnS could take advantage on the other side.
Goblin knows that he needs something to find his way back into this game, and he's going to go ahead and get a Dark Shrine, and he's just building it in his natural. He's got an Observer on top of his own Dark Shrine too, just in case the DnS would have a random ops. There is 1 Observer currently out for DnS, and that one is with his main army. It seems that DnS is going to follow your advice though, Wadi. Probably happy with the fact that he's got 4 Immortals against only a single Immortal of Goblin. Goblin does have the potential to drop some force fields, but it is hard to out-micro 4 Immortals and a Warp Prism.
Yep,
2 Adepts, by the way, shading into the natural as well.
Yeah, but DnS is just going to be everywhere. Those 2 Adepts definitely going to be a little nasty as well. Doesn't even have to focus on them too much. Doesn't have to synchronize the attacks because the battery's not in range of all these probes. Either way, he's doing great. 4 workers already down. Going to shade up toward the main base just to make sure he can keep going as long as possible.
Force
now
fields.
he dive on the other side too.
Yep, gets the sentries immediately of Goblin, zones out the Immortal as well. Warp Prism does fall on the side of DnS, so now maybe Goblin can still buy some time if he just had a few more sentries, but the problem is his own sentries got force fielded in, so they all went down, and if not even battery overcharge can save you, you know, you're in all sorts of trouble. Just a very strong first game by DnS. From the beginning till the end, it starts off by splitting up his Stalkers, trying to gather a bit of map vision, found what he was looking for. Goblin thought, alright, well then I'll just go for that contain, I'll work on your gate. He did not expect the DnS to send that Warp Prism to the other side of the map as early as he did. And then I do gotta say, I think Goblin got a tiny bit unfortunate, and that's perhaps the Lady Luck that was shining down upon DnS. That he A, had no energy for the recall, and B, like seconds before those 2 adepts in the Warp Prism showed up, he warped in 2 sentries, and yeah, that's where your heart just kind of drops, and you're like, oh my goodness, now I have to defend 2 adepts with 2 sentries, and I'm like, well, you know, that's gonna be a painful defense.
Yeah, it was just all the little things went wrong for Goblin, and DnS able to, I mean, good call just getting the Prism across the map as well. Like you said, Prism first is not really, you know, the super kind of obvious way of going it. Usually you get the Immortal out ASAP, but it really worked out because the Prism is what, you know, did a bit of damage, and, you know, he knew he was able to defend without. He was like, yeah, okay, you're probably going to kill one of my gates. That probably happens if I have an Immortal anyway. Like, how aggressive can I really be pushing from behind my gateways? So, a cool little response that DnS had, and again, really capitalized from there on out, and just made sure he kept his lead. Kill AHF is called, and game number 2 is on the way on hard lead. We got ourselves Goblin and DnS. Round 2 up and running. Let's see if Goblin can take us to a game 3.
Yeah, I love that point about not being too stubborn about defending a gate, because what you often see is that your opponent has an Immortal and a Sentry, and then they have the Warp Prism that quicker. And if you go Immortal before Prism, you still have to worry about force fields, right? Force fields from the low ground can absolutely trap your Immortal into a tiny corner, and if you then don't have a Warp Prism, you have to save it. Then you potentially are in even more trouble, and all because you're trying to save a gate that will most likely go down anyway. So perfect call by DnS. I loved it. I wouldn't say we've never seen it before, but I still see that sometimes people are a bit hesitant, right? Like, oh no, I do need the Immortal. But because he got the Scout so early, had a very early battery, warped in a Sentry early on, and I think that the Frenchman played it out in an excellent manner. Means that this man, who had a very strong showing in that close qualifier, because earlier we saw Aquaron, and we mentioned that Aquaron defeated Strange in his final best of 5 to make it into the Europe Regionals, and crazy to think that a player as strong as Strange has not even made it into the top 32 of Europe. This man also played Aquaron, and he actually took him out 3-0. So that was good. Can we turn things around in this PvP? The Croatian Protoss Platinum Heroes Goblin.
DnS in the bottom right with this 1-0 lead. Looking to expand on a very strong start would be amazing. Obviously, again, for either of these guys, 1-0 seems so doable. And then obviously to actually get that, and then, see who you play in round 2. It definitely feels like, momentum's behind you at that point. You gotta love that.
Absolutely. I don't think that Goblin is a one-trick pony in this matchup, so just because he went Trigate Rope in the first game, that doesn't mean that he'll do it all over again. But sometimes players can be a bit stubborn, right? Where even if they had a specific game plan for every single map that they figured they would potentially play, they'd be like, oh man, that first game was just a bit of a disaster and it wasn't supposed to go down like that. And then you could potentially just go back-to-back Trigate robots. As the DnS is now warping in a pilot in the bottom left side. It screams Stargate, and then obviously you set yourself up for the caster curse, right? Like, haha, it's not a Stargate at all, it's a gateway. You're like, what? A gate in the bottom left side? That makes no sense. But normally, more often than not, that is for a Stargate on the side of DnS.
Oh, you're not believing in the Twilight Council Dark Shrine, Roddy?
It's possible, but it is possible, but I did not think that was going to be the case. I mean, if it is Arrow Fire, then you're still like, it could be a robot, because he just builds him in the weirdest spot, and then still has really good execution. You're like, this is a Stargate file, and if I've ever seen one, it's like, bam, they'll never see it coming. It's the Robo, but that makes sense. Goblin is going to go for a Robo once more, so back-to-back Robo openings. This time around, it's the in-base Robo. You can still be very aggressive with 3 gateways in the Robo while building it in your own main. Don't hate it for DNS though, because I think with this setup, DNS is going to get a pretty early heads up that this is happening. And even if DNS temporarily builds the Nexus, I don't think he needs to let that Nexus finish, right? You can just cancel that Nexus. And if it's then Oracle against Robo, I think it's very uncomfortable to play on the side of Goblin. So I'm not loving this for our Croatian Protoss, but let's see how the game unfolds.
Two devs of DNS are going to start shading for something. The probe is there, and it does get the battery down to block the shading. Obviously, do not want to let your mineral line get hurt. And
Goblin found it, by the way. Yeah,
nice
okay.
catch.
That is something, because now Goblin will know that at the bare minimum he should leave 2 Stalkers behind. The DNS is going to warp in that Nexus, but that is obviously a Nexus that he can always cancel if he realizes what he's going up against. Because Goblin knows what he's going up against. The DNS doesn't know just yet. Good news for DNS, I want to say, is that he doesn't have a pylon yet on the low ground, and then he warps in a pylon on the low ground. Needs to be super careful with this Oracle. Takes a lot of damage. Oracle dies. Ooh. It's a shame we don't have player camps for this one, because I'm pretty sure the DNS would have been tilting his head back after losing that Oracle. And the worst thing is that he's still not 100% certain, I think, what he's going up against. Well, he thinks he can defend the Nexus? Isn't that absolutely bananas, Waddy?
I would think so. I mean, what's he got to really defend it with against the power of his opponent, who's going to be, you know, up a gateway, has the Prism Micro on his side? Are batteries that good? Yeah, I mean, they're good, but I don't know if they're that good. Just because obviously your opponent's never going to take damage anyway with the Prism Micro, so...
What I find even crazier is that he also opened up with the depths, right? And the depths are not going to do a whole lot for you here in the straight-up fight. I mean, Stasis Trap and Battery Overcharge, you can say that the dream is alive. And, that Stasis Trap is very good, but if I'm Goblin, I just run back now. Like, there's no need, right? You can just wait a little bit until the Stasis Trap runs out. You still have a micro potential as well with your War Prism. DNS is at least buying some time for an Immortal. And with an Immortal and batteries, I guess he is allowed to dream. This is a crazy hold if he pulls it off.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's why this was so good, though. That Immortal is now very close to popping. Maybe not perfectly, but it gives you the best possible chance of getting this Immortal out. So let's see what we can do. At the same time, Stasis Ward on the other side of the map looks as though it's going to catch everything. Oh my goodness, this fight's happening. Stasis Ward hits everything. The Immortal is going to start firing. The Super Battery takes all of the damage initially. Oh my goodness, it was getting healed by the other battery. Finally gets finished off. That's a lot of Stalkers from Goblin, but he's got no income right now.
I wouldn't hate a couple sentries on the side of Goblin, and that's exactly what he's going to go for, because DNS is going to go for back-to-back Immortals, and this obviously means that Goblin can now drop some Force Fields, and that should make it a lot easier to just get on top of an Immortal. Don't forget that Battery Overcharge is on cooldown. It's not a big one, but it is big enough, and eventually Goblin can start mining again from his main. I mean, DNS right there, and he had a few things going his way. I think in the end it is still not going to be good enough. If I was Goblin, I would just take it a bit slower now, warp in the Stalker at home, so you don't have another devastating Stasis Trap going down. Seems that Goblin really does not just want to kill this Nexus. Goblin wants to straight up win the game. Should work out, right, with the massive army supply advantage that he has. But you need to be a little bit careful, because an Immortal and a bunch of probes can be a bit tricky to deal with.
Yeah, the probe's obviously going to tank a lot. The Immortal's running. The battery is going to save the Immortals. The Adepts will not be able to get the kill. But the probes have not been enough. The Stalker count is still very good here. And that should be enough to overpower this Immortal and just everything else that's around. Obviously, with no economy now, DNS will not be able to stand up and fight. That's GG's. And that's us going to Game 3.
There was another big Stasis, by the way. Just as big as the previous one. In the main base of Goblin. Goblin just didn't care. Goblin said, like, nope, I feel that I can just end this game here, and I think I will end this game. Yeah, a little bit surprised that DNS, after A, his Stargate got scouted, B, he lost the first Oracle, and obviously C, you open up with 2 Adepts, not exactly the best best unit to just take a straight-up fight with early on. Still thought that he should defend his expand, but maybe he felt that if he cancels it, he's also going to be in a bit of trouble, but yeah, I mean, he lost the Oracle, so it was never a pretty start. Did his best, had a few things going his way. Stasis Trap was big, that Battery Overcharge wasn't all that bad. Immortal showed up at the right moment. Maybe there is a world where if he goes Immortal War Prism, he would have been able to save that first Immortal, but I just don't think you have enough time for it. It just seems like a very rough build order scenario for DNS, especially after losing Oracle #1.
Alright, well, we're going to go into Equilibrium for map 3. Now, this, Roddy, has a very interesting map. That gold base is fairly easily taken a lot of the time. How have you been finding PvP on this?
Yeah, I had a very fun game with the Night Phoenix on the first day that this came out, where I was like, all right, I already love taking gold bases. You know me, I'm a bit of a clown, and I know that a lot of these guys are way better than me if we just play normal, so you try to make it weird. And I was like, all right, Night Phoenix is a lot better than me. Let us go ahead and take the gold. And it's not just the gold, it obviously has a rich Vespian geyser too. So I was like, cool. So I go Phoenix Robo, obviously, but it seems that he had a misread and he thought I was one base all-in him while he opened up with a Stargate. So it's Phoenix against Phoenix, but he's playing it very defensive with a whole bunch of shield batteries. And I'm just like double Stargate, rich Vespian guys with gold base, have like 9 Phoenix when he had 6. And I was like, oh man, this one felt pretty dirty. And had a fun game against Arrow Fire on this. Well, I kind of like this map, to be honest. I think it's a good one. It's weird, but it's good.
Weird but good. That's always a good one, as we have ourselves on the top left-hand side. Let's see if he can find the weirdness of it in his favor. The red Protoss player, Goblin.
In the top right side, we are looking at the main base of the man who had a very unfortunate Oracle donation in that previous game, and that was perhaps his downfall already. Also, wrapping the Platinum Heroes, Le Adrian DNS. Even the most experienced players in this tournament, like DNS, I don't even know how many Europe regionals he's been part of, but I'm pretty confident in saying I don't think he ever missed one, right? Because this guy has just been a household name in the European scene for as long as many of us can remember. And not just a top 32 guy, right? Very often top 16. And if he's really feeling it, can even knock on the door of the top 8, top 12, depending on whatever format we use. Yeah, and perhaps he too still feels a bit of pressure because that first Oracle losing it the way he does on a European server where there's definitely no ping that comes into play. That's not supposed to happen, right? That Oracle is way too big of an investment to lose it that recklessly against Stalkers without Blink. Like, that's just not a thing.
Yep. It's not meant to happen like that, and could have just given him some further potential, because then, you know, you saw the Oracle get multiple chances to send off like one big stasis. 2 Oracles together would kill a lot of probes instead. That obviously means that Goblin would have to leave Stalkers behind, and it's a very different fight on the other side of the map. So, yeah, just could have been so much different, so much better for DNS. Like you said, just such an unnecessary mistake at the end of the day.
Yep, because he did make that second Oracle, and as you said, like Goblin, he kind of ignored single Oracle, because he's like, I've got a shield battery, and if he ever decides to activate Pulsar Beam and go for my probes, I'll eventually take care of it. Stasis traps he just didn't care about, but you cannot have the same approach against double Oracle, because then DNS can just immediately pull back into his main, Turbo in his main, and be like, alright, go ahead, kill my Nexus, who cares? If I kill 15 of your probes in a 1 base against 1 base, I'm still loving life. So yeah, that entire game would have been very, very different if DNS did not lose the first Oracle, but that is just how high-level StarCraft 2 is being played. Goblin, it really does seem that he's been studying the Great Book of Arrow Fire, as for the 3rd game in a row, goes for a Robo first. This time around, though, he opened up with a Depths. That could be because, A, he wants to make it seem that he's not doing this while he is actually doing it, right? A bit of a mind game. Or B, he wants to go for an early Prism and see if he can elevate a couple of Adepts into the main base. So both of those things are very plausible, and we'll see where Goblin takes it.
And Jeb's going to grab a probe on that bottom side. We do see a couple of Stalkers. Just going to be chasing the probe of Goblin away, and our 3rd gate comes up. There's the Nexus from DNS. He's got to figure out what's going on and find out how he wants to defend against this, because at the moment, his opponent is setting up to be very, very good against what he's doing. As DNS's pylon will go down, Goblin has the probe there, as though he's like, yeah, I'm going to drop the expansion here, and then, of course, that will never happen.
With this current setup, what do you even think would be the best response? Let's say DNS right now knows what he's going up against. Would you still go for the late Robo as response, or yeah, maybe Robo Gate? It feels like Twilight is not an option, and I think Stargate, it's just too late for that, right? Like, one Phoenix is just not good enough, so...
Yeah, I think you just go Robo, because at the end of the day, your opponent typically, you know, with this initially, doesn't actually build the Immortal. They usually go Prism and, you know, 3 gates and then power up across the map. So usually you can at least get the Immortal edge and defend a bit, and then your own Prism. With batteries, I think even a late Robo here is fine, and you just eventually you just gotta slowly play it out from there, because you're right, like, it's gonna take forever for Twilight to finish, and the Stargate's not gonna really be impactful soon enough either, so, yeah, I think, pretty much as you say, it just has to be a Robo, if it is anything.
Well, he thought so, Waddy. He was going to build a Robo. Now he cancels it and he goes for the Twilight instead. And now he cancels the Twilight as he realized, like, wait a minute, I'm having a bit of a mystery. Stalkers are chasing for that Warp Prism, by the way. This would be, oh, DNS. I kind of would have loved to see him try.
Yeah, he would have had it.
Yeah, now
Easily.
he turns around. Now he's too late. That would have been so big. Now he's still trying to get in range with that Warp Prism. We'll get a few shots off. Oh, DNS not second-guessing himself once, but multiple times in this game. Robo into Twilight, into Robo, into Chase, into Disengage, into Chase again, into Disengage. I mean, as we said, even these guys can still feel a bit of pressure. This is going to be a very chaotic fight, and I don't think I like DNS being here, because force fields are so scary for him, and the force fields will go down, and the Adepts are going to create a second wall of force fields. I love that by Goblin, even though he doesn't get all of them. Really cool move by Gobbus.
Does get so many more of the Stalkers, absolutely worthwhile, and now you have full power Goblin attacking in toward this natural, and DNS has just lost a little bit too much already. He's a mile away from any sort of tech to help him out. The pylon will go down. The battery's not going to be a factor here. This Nexus is dropping, and the Adepts could honestly shade on top of these sentries if they want to. I mean, I don't even think that's too crazy of a fight, and they are going to just shade into the mineral line, in fact, so that works too. I mean, obviously then you're maybe not working against the army as much. Super battery's going to pop up here. At the same time, we are now moving into the main base with everything else. We're knocking the pylons, we're knocking the batteries, and this is just going to give you a fight here as a Goblin to keep on working through DNS. That Immortal cannot realistically be saved, and good force fields are dropped. Wow. GG.
Really cool execution here in the end by Goblin, right? Letting that Shade finish up, creating chaos, elevating units into the main base, taking out those batteries on the high ground as well. I think Goblin is showing a lot of respect here to not a whole lot of DNS as he temporarily picked everything up. One of the gates being unpowered is obviously a problem. That means even less defensive units for DNS, but Goblin has that Warp Prism, and with that Warp Prism, yeah, the force field battle is not really a force field battle, right? That just only favors you. Goblin cannot, doesn't have to be that scared of force fields. Meanwhile, DNS needs to be ultra wary of them over and over and over again. I gotta say, the last 20 seconds maybe not going as hot for Goblin as the beginning of this fight, but I still think he's alright.
Yeah, I mean, there's a Prism going to come up here from DNS, which gives them some micro capabilities, but it's only the same micro that Goblin can pull off, and the Goblin just straight up does have more units as well. At this point is looking very good. Can keep on warping in gateway units too. That's something that DNS can no longer do. It looks as though Goblin's going to find his way back from behind in this series to close it out 2-1 and get that cover to 1-0 start in the group stage.
When in doubt, triggered Robo. that French kid was onto something. And unfortunately, the other French veteran is in a bit of trouble here. Battery overcharge is on cooldown. All the probes have fallen. And it is Goblin who opens